Hi, I'm Callan, and this is not the story I thought I'd be telling. I wasn't looking for applause. I wasn't even looking for a thank you. But I did think I'd at least be allowed through the doors. The security guard didn't look cruel. He looked confused, like he couldn't understand why someone dressed in slacks and a soft pink blouse was standing in 92-degree heat, holding a handmade card and a tiny gift bag. "I've checked twice," he said, giving me a sympathetic shrug. "You're not on the list, ma'am." Ma'am. That part stung more than it should have. I nodded politely, stepped back, and let the next group pass through. Inside, families were already finding their seats. I could hear the hum of an orchestra warming up, the clatter of heels across polished floors. Someone laughed nearby. Bright, joyful, full of pride. Not my someone. 3 days earlier, I'd wired my sister her final tuition payment, $9,240. Delia had told me she was short, that her student loan provider had messed something up, and the deadline was only a week away. "I'm freaking out," she said over the phone, her voice pinched and tearful. "I've come so far, Cal. I need a lifeline." And I gave her one. I took the money out of my emergency savings, canceled my dental appointment, ate oatmeal for dinner 3 nights in a row to make sure rent wouldn't bounce. Then I sent her a message. "Transfer complete. You've got this. I'm proud of you." She didn't reply. Now, outside the auditorium, I took out my phone and scrolled through our texts. Nothing since that day. I opened the group chat with Mom and Morris, our stepdad. The last message was a picture of Delia holding her white coat, beaming in front of a hospital entrance. Caption: "Our little doctor, she made it." There was no tag for me. No mention that I'd helped make it happen. I drove home with the AC turned up too high, trying to convince myself it was fine. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone had messed up the list. But then I remembered the text she sent just a week ago after I mentioned flying in. "You really don't have to come, Callan. It's just a ceremony. Honestly, it's kind of boring." She didn't say, "I'd love for you to be there." She didn't say, "Thank you." She didn't say anything that sounded remotely like family. And the thing is, I wouldn't have cared about any of that if I hadn't spent the last 7 years making sure she got here. Delia and I weren't close as kids. We were only a few years apart, but you'd think we'd grown up on different planets. She was glitter in ballet recitals and straight-A report cards. I was secondhand jeans, part-time jobs, and quietly fading into the background. When Mom married Morris, things got worse. Delia was his stepdaughter too, but you wouldn't know it. She became his pride, while I became Callan. Oh, you remember her, right? She got a car at 16. I got a bus pass. She got private tutors. I got told to study harder. When she got accepted into med school, the entire family threw a backyard celebration, complete with catered food and champagne. When I got promoted at work, not even a phone call. But I still helped, because I thought that's what family does. I covered her rent when she lost her internship. I bought her a used laptop when hers died mid-semester. I even sold a gold bracelet my grandmother had left me to cover her application fees. Every time she said something like, "You're a lifesaver, Cal. I swear, I'll make this up to you one day." The one day never came. When I got home that afternoon, I sat in my kitchen and opened my laptop, pulled up the transfer. $9,440. Memo: "Congrats, future doctor." I closed it again. The screen felt too bright. On the counter, my phone buzzed. I opened it to a photo from Mom. Delia in full regalia, cap, gown, diploma in hand, standing between her and Maurice. Caption: "We did it. We, not she, not even Delia. We." As if I was included in the celebration. As if I hadn't just been turned away at the door like a stranger. The next morning, a small box arrived. No return address, but the handwriting was Delia's. Inside was a blank thank you card, still wrapped, and a note written on the back of an old receipt. "Sorry for how yesterday went. Hope you understand." There was just a lot of pressure. Everyone was watching. I didn't want it to be awkward. That was it. No name, no signature, not a single word about the money, the list, or the fact that I hadn't seen her in over a year. I stared at it for a long time. A blank thank you. It almost made me laugh. Almost. I picked up a pen, opened the card, wrote one line. Pressure reveals character. Thanks for showing me yours. I didn't send it. Not yet. I slid it into the back of my journal, and then I opened a new page. A list. Every time I'd said yes. Every time I'd stayed quiet. Every time I'd loaned, funded, supported, fed, or driven her dreams while mine gathered dust. By item 14, my hands were trembling. This wasn't about a seat at a graduation. It was about how many times I had disappeared just to help someone else shine, and how familiar that disappearance had become. That afternoon, I made tea, sat in silence, and for the first time in years, I didn't wonder what I'd done wrong. I knew exactly what I'd done. I'd loved someone who didn't think I mattered unless I was useful, and I had mistaken that for family. Ever helped someone who quietly deleted you the moment they didn't need you anymore? Yeah, me too. The next morning, I poured my coffee over the sink by mistake. I wasn't even tired, just distracted. There's a kind of numbness that creeps in slowly, not like grief, which crashes in waves, but like fog. You don't notice you're lost until the world around you is too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the blank card again, the one Delia sent in a box like an afterthought. I held it like it might explain something, like maybe if I stared hard enough, the words would finally show up. But it stayed empty, kind of like every conversation we'd had in the past year. I had let it slide too many times. The quiet exclusions, the missed birthdays, the way Delia only called when something broke, her laptop, her car, her life. I had told myself it wasn't personal, that she was just busy, that med school was hard, that maybe, just maybe, being needed was the same as being wanted. But it wasn't. Not when you're only wanted for what you can give. The first time Delia asked for money, it was framed as an emergency. She was still in undergrad, and I had just gotten promoted to supervisor at a job I hated. I remember the voicemail perfectly. Hey Cal, I don't know what to do. My financial aid got delayed again, and my rent's due Friday. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. She always knew how to say desperate just right, like it made her human, like it made me a hero. I sent the money that night. She called me the next morning, full of tears and gratitude, saying, I don't know what I'd do without you. At the time, I felt honored to be that person for her. But a pattern formed. The calls always came at the end of the month, always with a new explanation. My boss cut my hours. My textbook was more expensive than expected. The lab fee was a surprise. My card got frozen. It didn't matter. There was always something, and I always wired the money. At one point, I started budgeting for her chaos. I started putting aside $50 here, $100 there. Not for myself, not for emergencies, for her. It took me years to realize what that meant, that I was literally planning for her mistakes, that I had folded her recklessness into my routine, that I was becoming the safety net no one had ever been for me. A week after the graduation, Delia finally called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I could hear the smile in her voice. Hey, so, I just wanted to say thank you again, for everything. I know things got a little messy with the ceremony, but I hope we're good. Anyway, I'll call later. Love you. Love you. Like a sticker slapped on a box, already falling apart. I deleted the message. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my filing cabinet. The old one. The one where I kept receipts, contracts, warranties, tax returns. And at the very back, I found what I was looking for. A yellow folder labeled Delia, Tuition and Support. Inside, there were printed bank statements, wire transfers, even the Venmo screenshot from when she asked for just $200 to cover books. You're seriously saving my life right now, Cal. I wasn't keeping records because I wanted revenge. I was keeping them because I wanted to remember that I mattered too. Later that night, I met up with someone I hadn't seen in a while, Jules. We used to work together at a bookstore in our early 20s. She was the kind of friend who noticed when you needed silence instead of advice. After we drifted apart, we still exchanged the occasional, "You good?" texts. But it had been a year since we sat across from each other like this. We met at a little place tucked between two pawn shops, a bar that smelled like burnt citrus and nostalgia. She took one look at me and said, "So, which sister thing is it this time?" I laughed. Sharp, brittle. "The usual. I paid for her to finish med school. She didn't list me at her graduation. Sent a thank you card without writing in it." Jules blinked. "That feels metaphorical." "I know, right?" I took a long sip. "It's like she wrapped my irrelevance in tissue paper." "Damn." She leaned back. "You ever gonna tell her how that feels?" I shrugged. She wouldn't get it. Delia lives in this alternate universe where she's always the main character, and I'm just the lighting crew. "She's lucky you didn't burn the whole set down." I didn't respond, but in my head, something sparked. That weekend, I went back to Mom's house for dinner. Not because I wanted to, because I needed to see something. The living room was exactly the same as always. Stale lavender air freshener, chipped family photos on a slanted shelf, and a broken clock that hadn't worked since I was 17. Mom opened the door like nothing was wrong. "Callan, finally! You missed your sister's toast at the dinner party last night." I stepped in and looked around. Delia wasn't there. "Where is she?" "She and Maurice went to the spa. It's a celebration week, you know. She's earned it." I nodded slowly. "Spa? Paid for with?" Mom waved it off. "Oh, I don't know. Her boyfriend's probably covering it. Or maybe the school gave her a stipend. She's resourceful, that one." I smiled without humor. "Yeah, resourceful." I made tea and sat across from Mom at the dining table. She was sorting through old receipts. "What are you looking for?" I asked. She squinted. "Something from when we helped Delia apply for school. Just trying to see if there's a tax write-off." My stomach twisted. "You're writing off Delia's education now?" "Well," she said casually, "it's technically a household contribution." I put my cup down. "Mom, you didn't pay for her med school." She looked up, puzzled. I didn't blink. "I did." There was silence. The hum of the fridge kicked in like background static. "Callan," she said finally, "you've always been so good with money. And Delia, she's always needed more support. That's just how it is. You're strong enough to give." I sat back. No. I was scared enough to say yes. Jiot Nuok Tran, Lee. Emotional breakpoint. That night, I stood in my childhood room, still painted a faded lilac, and stared at the old corkboard by the window. There were no pictures of me, just Delia. Prom. White coat ceremony. Childhood awards. I pulled out a pushpin and let one photo fall. It was Delia holding a check. My handwriting in the memo line. First semester. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just took the photo, folded it in half, and tucked it into my wallet like proof. Twist, revealing Morris's quiet complicity. Before I left, I passed Morris in the hallway. He gave me the usual nod, like we were co-workers passing each other on break. "I heard you made things weird at dinner," he muttered. I stopped. "You mean I told the truth?" He didn't meet my eye. "Delia didn't ask you for help. You volunteered." I took a breath. "Actually," I said softly, "she told me the school messed up her financial aid, that she was about to be dropped, that she had no one else." Maurice finally looked up. I continued. "And now I know she'd already been approved for a private grant. Fully covered." His mouth opened, but no words came. "You knew, didn't you?" I said. "You knew about the grant. You knew I was being played." He didn't deny it, just exhaled and said, "It wasn't my place." That moment changed everything. Have you ever realized you were the backup plan in someone else's success story? It started with a coffee stain. Delia had left a box in Mom's basement last summer. Plastic, taped badly, with "College stuff, don't toss," scribbled in Sharpie across the lid. Mom had shoved it behind the laundry shelves where everything that didn't belong went to be forgotten. But a leaky jug of detergent and one soggy corner later, the tape peeled loose. I didn't mean to open it. I had gone downstairs looking for the toolbox. But something about seeing Delia's name, her handwriting, that exclamation point, still so full of herself even in storage, itched under my skin. So I peeled back the lid. Inside were folders, flash drives, 2 coffee mugs wrapped in bubble wrap, and a journal. A thick, hardbound one. Leather cover. Gold initials. DM. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, flipped it open, and began to read. Twist 1. The story that wasn't hers. The first few pages were what you'd expect. Schedules, to-do lists, half-doodles of hearts and chemical equations. But about halfway through, there was a section titled Personal Statement Drafts, Residency, Scholarships. I didn't want to read them, but I did. Page after page of Delia's handwriting, describing growing up in instability, living below the poverty line, sacrificing food to pay bills, watching my older sister spiral into addiction just to help me survive. I blinked. Reread, read again. Addiction? There was no addiction. I had worked 2 jobs, skipped college, yes. But spiraled? She made me a cautionary tale, a broken backdrop, something tragic enough to make her look brave. And the worst part? She told it so well, I almost believed it. My sister gave up on herself so I wouldn't have to. It broke her, but I promised it wouldn't be in vain. Broke me. Not financially, not emotionally. She wrote as if I were dead. I shoved the journal back into the box, my hands shaking. I hadn't realized how cold the basement floor had gotten, or how quiet the house was. When I climbed the stairs again, everything felt smaller. The walls, the ceilings, the light. In the kitchen, Mom was chopping cucumbers like nothing had happened. I watched her for a long time. Did Delia ever tell you I was an addict? She froze mid-slice. What? In her med school applications, she said I spiraled, that I gave up my future, for her. Mom blinked. Well, you did give up your future. That's not the same thing. She set the knife down. Callan, you've always been dramatic. You never wanted college anyway. That's not true. I had a full ride to Evergreen. You turned it down. I turned it down because Delia's scholarship didn't cover housing, and you said... I swallowed hard. You said she needed a real shot. Mom didn't respond. Just walked to the sink, rinsed her hands, dried them on a towel, like she could scrub the conversation off her skin. Cao trao kam ksuk. Emotional peak, I went back home that night with the journal in my bag. I didn't text Delia. I didn't plan to. But I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the line. It broke her, but I promised it wouldn't be in vain. She had built a career, a persona, off the ruins she imagined for me. And suddenly, the blank thank you card didn't feel careless. It felt cruel, calculated, a symbol of exactly how much she'd already taken. Not just money, not just years. She took my story. The next morning, I called Jules. I need a favor, I said. No context? You'll hate me if I explain first. I'm intrigued. Go on. We met at her apartment. I handed her the journal. Am I crazy? I asked. Did I hallucinate a whole life where I wasn't a disaster? Jules flipped through the pages silently. Her eyebrows twitched. She laughed once, a bitter, choked sound. This is... I know. She made you the antagonist in your own life. No, worse, she made me scenery. Twist 2. She used me in her scholarship speech too. Jules tapped one of the pages. Wait, this line, my sister's sacrifice taught me how to walk away from chaos with grace. I nodded. She used that in her speech, Jules said. The graduation gala livestream. I remember that exact line. My stomach dropped. She used my life, I whispered, my actual life, as her brand. Jules closed the journal slowly. You know what this is, Cal. This is theft, not money, identity. Jiot Nuok Tran, lie. Emotional snap. I drove straight to the hospital where Delia had just started her residency. I knew she had night shifts. I'd memorized her schedule back when I used to bring her home-cooked meals during exam weeks. I sat in the parking lot with the engine off, the journal on the passenger seat. My fingers curled around the steering wheel like it owed me answers. But I didn't go inside. Instead, I turned the key, drove home, and typed up an email. To her residency director. Subject line: clarification regarding candidate's public narrative. I didn't send it, but I saved the draft. That night, I opened my journal. Not hers. Mine. I turned to the envelope I'd tucked there, the one with the line I'd written days earlier. Pressure reveals character. Thanks for showing me yours. Next to it, I added a note. And ambition without integrity is just vanity with a LinkedIn profile. I stared at that for a long time. Then I finally let myself cry. Not because I was weak, but because I was done pretending none of this mattered. Ever watch someone rewrite your life and still get a standing ovation for it? There's a moment in every life where silence stops feeling like grace and starts feeling like betrayal. That night, mine arrived like a thunderclap. Quiet, but final. The email to Delia's residency director still sat unsent in my drafts folder, blinking at me like a dare. I didn't open it again. I knew I wasn't ready to destroy her, but I also knew I couldn't keep swallowing what she'd fed me for years. The lie that I was built for sacrifice, and she for spotlight. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity, and maybe a little justice. But more than anything, I wanted to stop carrying everyone else's weight and calling it loyalty. It started with a walk through the park the next day. Early morning, barely anyone around except for a few runners and the occasional dog walker. I needed air, movement, space between me and that basement box full of false narratives. My phone buzzed. Delia. I let it go to voicemail, again. But this time she texted, "Hey, can we talk, please? I think we've both been holding a lot in." That was rich. Delia suggesting we had been holding things in when she had rewritten my life like it was her college thesis. "Still," I replied, "come by, but don't lie to me this time." She showed up that evening, dressed like she had somewhere better to be. Heels, blazer, perfect hair, always polished, always on. She stepped into my apartment and looked around like it was the first time she'd ever really seen it. Maybe it was. "Didn't realize you painted the kitchen that color," she said casually. "It's been like that for 2 years." "Oh, right." I didn't offer her tea. I didn't make small talk. I just pointed to the couch. "Sit." She hesitated, then complied. I sat across from her and slid the journal onto the coffee table between us. She froze. "You kept it," she said. "You lied with it," I replied. She tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "I'm going to ask you one question, and I want an actual answer, Delia, not a PR script." She nodded, lips pressed tight. "Why me?" I asked. "Why did you make me the tragic sister, the addict, the burnout, the sacrifice?" She didn't answer at first, just stared at the journal like it might catch fire and save her the trouble. "I didn't think anyone would ever read it," she finally said. "That's not an answer." She swallowed. "Because it made the story cleaner. You know how these applications are. They want a hook, something compelling, something that shows you've come from struggle." I leaned back, my throat burning. "So you gave me your struggle." "No, Callan, I didn't give you anything. I just reframed what was already hard." "Hard for who?" I snapped. "You? The one who got tutors and ballet lessons, and a car at 16 while I worked double shifts and slept in a basement room with no door." Delia's voice shook. "I never asked you to." "Yes, you did." I stood. "Every single time you said, 'I don't know what I'd do without you.'" That wasn't gratitude. That was currency. You knew exactly what you were asking me to be. Your fallback, your ghost, your scapegoat. Her eyes welled, and for a second, I wondered if the tears were real, but I didn't care. "I didn't think you'd mind," she whispered. And there it was. Twist. Cao trao kam suk. Not that she didn't know. Not that she was confused. But that she thought I wouldn't mind. That I'd disappear like always and let her be the hero. She reached out. I didn't know it hurt you this much. I pulled away. That's because you never asked. We sat in silence for a full minute. Then she said something that broke me in a way I didn't expect. You're the strong one, Cal. You always have been. As if strength was some kind of consolation prize for being forgotten. I'm not strong, I said quietly. I'm just used to pretending it doesn't matter. Giat Noctron, lie. Snap. Point Delia stood, grabbing her bag. So what happens now? You ruin me? You send the email? I didn't answer. She softened her voice. You wouldn't. You already did, I said. You just got applause for it. After she left, I sat on the floor with my back against the kitchen cabinet, arms wrapped around my knees like I used to when I was a kid, hiding from arguments. Only now, the argument was inside me. Because part of me still wanted to protect her. And that part felt poisoned. The next morning, I received a letter. Handwritten. From Maurice. I hadn't spoken to him since the confrontation in the hallway. Inside was one sheet of paper and a note. Callan, you deserve to see this. I never knew how to speak up. I'm sorry. Attached was a copy of Delia's residency speech draft, annotated, in Maurice's handwriting, and under one highlighted section, my sister's downward spiral became my blueprint for survival. He had written, Are you sure about this? Cal's never done drugs, or quit anything. Delia's note in the margin, Doesn't have to be literal, just adds depth. She chose to exaggerate. She chose to turn me into a sob story, even when someone questioned it. She knew. And still, she did it anyway. I didn't eat that day. I didn't shower. I didn't reply to Jules when she texted. How'd it go? I just stared at that speech until the words blurred. And for the first time in my life, I realized Delia didn't love me. She loved the version of me she could use. Ever been told you were the strong one, just so no one had to care what it cost you? I didn't send the email. I didn't rip it up either. I left it in the drafts folder, like a sealed door, one I could open when I was finally ready to stop being afraid of who would be on the other side. The day after Maurice's letter, I sat in my apartment for hours, staring at the annotated speech. There were 100 things I wanted to scream, but I didn't have the energy to scream anymore. Anger was a muscle I hadn't used in so long. I wasn't sure I could lift it. I needed to move, not just from that chair, but from the version of me that stayed in rooms where no one looked up when I spoke. So I did something I hadn't done in a while. I picked up the phone, and I called my therapist. Dr. Reyes didn't ask why I came back. She just offered tea, smiled softly, and let the silence stretch until I filled it. I think I've spent so long proving I wasn't broken that I forgot to ask if I was okay. Her head tilted slightly, the way it always did when she was about to nudge deeper. Why is being not broken your baseline? Because someone always had it worse. Because I didn't want to be a burden. Because the minute I admitted I needed help, I was afraid no one would believe me. She wrote something down, then looked back up. Who told you that your pain needed permission? I didn't have an answer. Only a truth I hadn't named out loud. No one had to tell me. I had learned it by watching what happened when I spoke. That weekend, Jules texted. There was a spoken word night happening at a used bookstore downtown. I didn't want to go, but I also didn't want to keep living in the four corners of my own isolation. So I said yes. The place smelled like cinnamon tea and old paperbacks, the kind of cozy that made you ache a little if you sat still too long. We found a seat near the back, tucked into the wall, half hidden by a coat rack. Halfway through the night, a woman got up and read a poem about growing up as the invisible sibling. She used words like backdrop and afterthought, her voice cracking once before she steadied herself. Jules passed me a napkin, not a word exchanged, just knowing. And that quiet was louder than anything Delia had ever said to me. When I got home that night, I did something strange. I pulled out a suitcase and opened my closet. I didn't have anywhere to go, no trip planned, no dramatic exit strategy. I just wanted to remind myself I could leave, that I didn't have to sit in the same life I'd been assigned, that I could pack my things, even metaphorically, and rebuild from somewhere that didn't begin with being less so, someone else could be more. Sunday morning, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Callan," she said, voice clipped. "Delia said you've been upset. I just want to say maybe you're being too sensitive about all this." I stared at the wall. "She used my life to build her career," I said. "She got through medical school. Isn't that what matters?" "And what did I get, Mom?" I asked. "What did I get out of sacrificing everything for her?" She paused, then said, "You're stronger. You've always been more grounded." I laughed. Not kindly. "Stop calling it strength when you mean neglect." She started to protest, but I ended the call. For the first time, I didn't stay on the line long enough to hear her rewrite the story again. That night, I pulled out my own journal. Not hers. Not Delia's carefully crafted lies wrapped in leather binding. Mine. I wrote one sentence. I'm allowed to take up space. And then, I made a list. Not of the times I'd said yes. Not of the money I'd given or the lies I'd swallowed. This list was different. I wrote, I learned to pay my bills before anyone taught me how. I showed up when no one else did. I loved without keeping score, even when others did. I didn't become bitter. I became clear. I still choose grace. But now, it includes me. Later that week, I emailed Delia. Not the director, not her program, just her. You hurt me. That's not up for debate. And I'm done being your ghost story. No hello, no closure, just a fact. She replied 6 hours later. I'm sorry you feel that way. I really thought I was honoring you. But okay, if this is what you need. I didn't respond. Because her apology wasn't about me. It was about her image of herself. And I was done living in the mirror she used to make herself feel tall. Ever realize that staying quiet doesn't make you noble? It just makes you invisible? I didn't tell anyone I was moving. Not Mom. Not Delia. Not even Jules. At least not right away. It wasn't some dramatic walkout. No suitcase slamming. No keys dropped on the counter with a pointed, I'm done. It was quieter than that. Like slipping out of a coat that never fit and finally letting your skin breathe. I found a sublet on the other side of the city. A fourth-floor walk-up with creaky wood floors, chipped molding, and too much morning sun. The landlord apologized for the age of the place, but to me, it felt like possibility. Like freedom that hadn't been scripted yet. I packed only what I needed. 3 boxes, a thrifted desk, 1 coffee mug. The journal, not hers. Mine. The first night in the new place, I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by half-opened boxes, a half-eaten sandwich, and the softest silence I'd ever known. For the first time, my life didn't echo back someone else's expectations. I lit a candle, wrote 1 sentence in my journal. Starting over doesn't always require a storm. Sometimes it begins with a whisper. That week, Jules came by with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. You look different, she said, scanning the barely furnished apartment. Like you've lost 20 pounds of emotional obligation. I laughed, setting the wine glasses down. Turns out, carrying someone else's success story on your back is heavier than it looks. She raised an eyebrow. Did you ever send the email? No, but I did something better. Better than revenge? I disappeared. Jules nodded slowly. That's its own kind of power. A small twist. Not just escape, but rebuild. I didn't just leave. I applied. For a digital marketing course. Nothing glamorous, nothing bold. But it was mine. My decision, my timeline. It felt almost too small to matter. But sometimes, rebuilding doesn't come in fireworks. It's the moment you update your resume after years of pretending you weren't qualified for anything. The click of submit on a course you chose. The realization that no one else gets to decide your worth anymore. A few days later, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name, written in that neat, perfect handwriting. Delia. I stared at it for a while, debating whether to burn it, return it, or pretend it didn't exist, but I opened it. Inside, a photo of us on her med school acceptance day. She was crying. I was smiling, barely. On the back, she'd written, "I know now that what I took from you wasn't mine to shape. I can't fix it, but I'm trying to understand it." That was it. No plea, no apology, just acknowledgement. And weirdly, it landed. Not like a healing salve, but like closing a chapter without needing to underline anything. I didn't reply, but I taped the photo to the inside of my new closet door. Not as forgiveness, not as nostalgia, just as proof that I existed, that I was there, that the story was mine too. Sao trao kam ksuk, giot nuok tran li, implied. This wasn't the explosion. This was the decision not to explode. The moment I realized healing doesn't always look like justice, it sometimes looks like getting a full night's sleep and waking up without dread. One afternoon, I sat in a local coffee shop, laptop open, editing my resume. A girl at the next table looked about Delia's age. She was on the phone, whispering urgently, "I don't know what I'm doing. My sister's covering rent again. I can't keep disappointing her." She caught me glancing her way. I smiled softly. Not pity, not recognition, just understanding. She mouthed, "Sorry." I shrugged. "Sisters," I whispered back. And in that moment, I didn't feel erased. I felt real, whole, free. Ever felt the biggest transformation wasn't walking away in anger, but simply deciding to stop asking for a seat at a table you built? A month passed. The light in my new apartment hit different around 5 p.m. Warmer, quieter. I didn't realize how much I had missed the luxury of small moments. Sitting by a window with a cup of tea, walking to the corner store without checking my phone out of obligation, laughing at a stupid meme, and not wondering if it was okay to feel light. I had stopped bracing for someone else's needs to drop into my lap, and in that peace, something surprising bloomed. Hope. One afternoon, I got an email from the program I'd applied to, the one I submitted right after deciding I was done shrinking. "We'd love to have you join our fall cohort. Orientation starts in 2 weeks." I didn't cry, but I did let myself feel it. That rising warmth in the chest, that tiny voice whispering, "This is yours." Not borrowed, not sacrificed for someone else. Yours. Later that week, Jules and I sat on a park bench with iced lattes and zero urgency. "You ever think about reaching out to her?" she asked softly. "Delia?" She nodded. I paused. "No," I said. And not because I'm angry, just because I don't need to anymore. Jules smiled like she knew exactly what that meant. Mini twist, emotional echo. A few days later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, you don't know me. I'm in Delia's residency group. She mentioned you once, kind of vaguely. I just wanted to say, if even half of what she built came from you, then thank you. That's all." I read it twice. I didn't respond, but I screenshotted it and saved it in a folder called Proof I Was Here. I started teaching part-time. A friend of a friend needed someone to run an intro course for adults going back to school. I almost turned it down. But then I thought of all the versions of me who'd been left behind in order to keep someone else on track. This felt like returning to those lost selves, gathering them up, letting them speak. On the first day, one of the women raised her hand halfway through and said, "Sorry, I'm probably too old to learn this, right?" I looked at her and said the words I wish someone had said to me years ago. "You're not too late. You're just early, for the version of you that finally gets to matter." Final emotional shift, inner twist. I didn't forgive Delia, but I stopped needing to. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't always about letting someone back in. Sometimes it's just choosing not to let them rent space in your heart anymore. The photo she sent still lives in my closet. Not hidden, not on display. Just there, like a book I've read, closed, and placed on the shelf. Sometimes I open it and whisper to the girl in that photo, "You made it out. You didn't even scream, but you made it." I don't share this to gain pity or applause or even clarity. I share it because maybe someone else needs to know they're not broken just because they finally said no. Maybe someone out there is still trying to make peace with a version of themselves written by someone else's hand. If someone ever rewrote your life in their story, did you ever rewrite it back for yourself? Just drop a 1 if that sentence hits somewhere deep. Sometimes the hardest kind of love is the one we give to people who never return it. And yet, walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally chose yourself. For so long, I believed being strong meant staying silent, sacrificing, making space. But strength, real strength, is rewriting your story without asking for permission. Maybe you're the one who's always been the support beam, holding everyone up while no one notices you're cracking. If this story resonates with you, let's talk. What would your story look like if you stopped shrinking for others? Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, or just type 1 if you've ever felt like the background in someone else's life. And if this video found a way into your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel. More stories are coming, stories that matter, stories that might just sound a little like yours.